Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Bernanke.
Congressman McHenry from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Bernanke, thank you for your testimony. I know this is certainly not easy to recall what happened in those very, very busy days of the fall, and you've certainly had a very challenging tenure with the Federal Reserve. You didn't come in easy times. So thank you for your service to your country. And yeah, during your testimony in front of Financial Services, which I'm on, in your numerous comments, you worked very closely in the fall with the former Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Paulson. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in some testimony, some comments, it was almost daily or hour-by-hour conversations throughout the fall with your counterpart there.
Daily, certainly.
Certainly. And with then New York Fed head Tim Geithner, you also had significant involvement with him on a very regular basis. Is that true?
That's correct.
Yes. So the combination of the two, in context of this event, this controversy that we're analyzing today, did you have conversations with those two about Bank of America?
I had conversations with Secretary Paulson, who of course was the Treasury Secretary at that time, and we talked about, for example, plans for how we might structure a package to help Bank of America avoid being destabilized. At that point, at that time, President Geithner had already been designated as the Treasury Secretary nominee, and therefore he recused himself from detailed intervention or involvement in such transactions. We did give him basic information so that he would be informed, but he was not involved in the details of the package that was put together for Bank of America.
Okay, so he was not directly involved and recused himself because of confirmation hearings and the potential of going from the Fed to the Treasury and the conflicts that would pose. Did you have conversations with Mr. Geithner to give him, to keep him informed of what was going on?
I did.
Okay. There was an email from Tim Geithner on December 20th at 8:02 in the morning. Are you all over B of A/ML, and are you getting what you need from the troops? And this was to Kevin Warsh. Now, this email sort of raises to me that while Mr. Geithner was concerned, and we have another chain here that says that he's basically washed his hands in concern for a tough potentially tough confirmation hearing. Makes sense. But it seems to me that he was all over this. Is that your impression?
No, my impression is that he was informed about the general situation. I would assume that when he meant the troops, he was referring to the staff at the New York Fed, where he was still the president. But I should say, to the best of my knowledge, he was not involved in the detailed negotiations that developed the package for Bank of America.
In an email, we know from a subpoenaed email from the Fed that Mr. Geithner was, like you said, aware, and was at least aware of an ultimatum to Ken Lewis as well. And he says, can't Mac have to close? There's also notes from Bank of America. It's with the CFO, Mr. Price, who said, fire BOD if you do it, meaning the Mac. Tim G. agrees. So it seems that he was very involved. Tim Geithner was very involved step by step in this process, if not working through third parties.
My only association with Mr. Geithner during this period was occasional phone calls to update him on the general developments. I'm not aware of any other involvement.
Two additional things just to wrap up. Did you have conversations about Paulson's conversation with, did you have a conversation with Mr. Paulson about his discussions with Ken Lewis? Because there's been testimony, and we've heard that Paulson said very clearly that he would fire Ken Lewis and the board. And it seems to me, in the reading of all this stuff, is that the government became one, and so perhaps what Mr. Paulson said was thought of as coming from you. And there could be some of this, coming about. So, confusion coming about after the fact.
The gentleman's time has expired, but
could you,
the witness will be, can answer your question, of course.
Could you describe the conversation you had with Mr. Paulson about his conversation with Mr. Lewis?
He reported back to me that Mr. Lewis, as I recall, had decided not to invoke the MAC, and that laid open the basis for developing the transaction. But again, I never told anyone to threaten Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thank the